They framed me and ruined my career, but their lies led to arrests, scandals, and the collapse of their empire. I never thought I'd become the villain in my own workplace. For 8 years, I worked tirelessly at Weston & Company, a mid-sized marketing firm where I climbed the ladder from an entry-level associate to a department manager. My team respected me, my work spoke for itself, and I was on track for a big promotion. Then came Cameron. Cameron was hired 6 months ago as a senior strategist, though he acted more like a rock star than a team player. From the moment he walked in, he had an air about him, a mix of charm and arrogance that made him magnetic to some and insufferable to others. Unfortunately, our boss, Aaron, fell into the first category. What started as casual lunches between Cameron and Aaron turned into private meetings, closed-door discussions, and Cameron mysteriously landing on projects that weren't his responsibility. I ignored it at first. Office politics were annoying but manageable. Then the rumors began. "You're not safe, Ellie," my colleague Maya whispered during one of our late-night wrap-up meetings. "What are you talking about?" I asked, brushing off her cryptic tone. "Cameron's gunning for your job. He's been cozying up to Aaron and trash-talking you to anyone who'll listen," she said, leaning closer. "He's saying you're mismanaging budgets and taking shortcuts on projects." I froze. "That's absurd. I've never—" "I know," Maya said quickly, "but it doesn't matter what's true. It matters what they believe." The next few weeks felt like walking into a minefield every day. Cameron's influence grew, and small things in the office started shifting. Deadlines moved without warning, files went missing, and tasks I'd already completed somehow didn't make it to the system. One morning, Erin called me into her office. She sat behind her desk, Cameron leaning casually against the wall with a smug grin. "Ellie," Erin began, her tone serious, "we've received some concerning feedback about your performance." I blinked. "Feedback? From whom?" Erin glanced at Cameron, then back at me. "Multiple sources. There are allegations that you've been mishandling client funds and cutting corners on deliverables. We need to take this seriously." I felt my stomach drop. "That's not true. I've always—" "We've reviewed some accounts, and there are discrepancies," Cameron cut in, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding, but it's significant enough that we need to suspend you pending an investigation." I stared at them in disbelief. "You're suspending me? Without even hearing my side?" Erin sighed. "It's protocol, Ellie. This isn't personal." But it was. The next day, security escorted me out of the building. My work email was shut off, my access to the server revoked. I was humiliated, angry, and, above all, confused. I spent the next week reviewing every project I'd managed, searching for any hint of the discrepancies Cameron had mentioned. It wasn't until Maya came over with a bottle of wine and a USB drive that things started to make sense. "Check this out," she said, plugging the drive into my laptop. "What is it?" I asked. "It's a copy of the budget reports Cameron submitted last week," she explained. "I knew something felt off, so I pulled the versions you sent in before you got suspended." We compared the files side by side. Cameron had doctored the numbers, inflating expenses and reallocating funds to make it look like I'd mishandled money. "This is fraud," I said, my voice shaking. Maya nodded. "And that's not all. He's been meeting with a few team members after hours, the ones who are desperate for promotions. I think he's getting them to back up his story." I could feel my anger boiling over. Cameron wasn't just trying to steal my job. He was trying to destroy my reputation. But I wasn't going down without a fight. With Maya's help, I gathered every piece of evidence I could find. Email chains, project timelines, original reports, and even client feedback that contradicted Cameron's claims. I knew confronting Erin wouldn't work. She was too wrapped up in Cameron's charm. Instead, I decided to take a different approach. The night before my scheduled meeting with HR, I reached out to an old college friend, Nick, who now worked as a corporate lawyer. He agreed to come with me to the meeting and represent me if things got messy. "I'll draft a letter detailing what we've found," Nick said over the phone. "If they try to pin this on you, we'll hit back hard." The next morning, I walked into the HR office with Nick by my side, carrying a folder full of evidence. As I sat down across from Erin, Cameron, and the HR manager, I felt a spark of confidence return. "Ellie," Erin began, her tone saccharine. "We want to give you a chance to explain yourself before we move forward with disciplinary action." I smiled tightly. "I appreciate that. But before I explain, I'd like you to take a look at these." I slid the folder across the table. Erin's expression shifted as she flipped through the pages, her eyes darting to Cameron with every damning piece of evidence. What is this?" she stammered. "It's proof that Cameron fabricated the allegations against me," I said calmly. "He altered financial reports, manipulated project records, and coerced team members into backing his lies. And I have more where that came from." Cameron's face turned pale. "This is ridiculous. She's just trying to cover her tracks." "I'd advise you to stop talking," Nick interrupted, his voice sharp. "Everything we've presented here is verifiable, and if this goes to court, it won't end well for you." The room fell silent. Erin looked at Cameron, her trust in him visibly crumbling. But I wasn't done yet. I leaned forward and said, "You should also know that I've contacted a few of our clients, just to get their perspective on my work. Turns out, they have some interesting things to say about Cameron's involvement in recent projects." I didn't elaborate, but the implication was clear. If they wanted a fight, I was ready to bring the house down. As I left the meeting, I felt a mix of relief and anticipation. I'd landed a solid blow, but I knew this battle wasn't over. Cameron and Erin had underestimated me, and they were about to pay for it. Walking out of the HR office that day, I felt a flicker of hope, but it was quickly overshadowed by anger. They thought they could destroy me with lies and walk away unscathed? Not a chance. After that meeting, Cameron and Erin went eerily silent. I expected a swift response, but days passed, and nothing happened. No emails, no calls, not even a passive-aggressive memo. It was unsettling, like the calm before a storm. Maya, my ever-loyal ally, kept feeding me updates from the office grapevine. "Cameron's been acting jumpy," she said over the phone one evening. "He's avoiding everyone, especially the people he roped into his scheme. Rumor has it HR called him in for a second meeting." "Good," I said, "but we're not stopping here." That night, I pulled out my laptop and began drafting a series of emails. My targets? Weston and Company, key clients. Dear client name, I hope this email finds you well. I wanted to take a moment to thank you for your support and collaboration during my time managing your account. Recently, there have been some internal challenges at Weston and Company, and I feel it's important to clarify any misunderstandings regarding our past projects. Attached, you'll find a summary of our work together, including the original budget reports and timelines. Should you have any concerns or questions about these, please don't hesitate to reach out. Warm regards, Ellie Carter. The goal wasn't to stir the pot. It was to set the record straight. Cameron's lies had likely tainted my reputation, and I needed the clients to know the truth. Within 24 hours, I started receiving replies. Most were polite reassurances, but one stood out. "Ellie, thank you for reaching out. I've had some concerns about Weston and Company recently, particularly with how our last campaign was handled. If you're open to it, I'd love to discuss this further. Are you available for a call this week? Best, Martin H." Martin was one of Weston and Company's biggest accounts. If he was unhappy, that was a crack in the company's armor I could exploit. During our call, Martin didn't hold back. "Honestly, Ellie, I was surprised when you left the project. The campaign went downhill after that. We've had missed deadlines, inconsistent communication, and some questionable billing practices." My ears perked up at the mention of billing. "Questionable how?" "Charges we didn't approve," he said. "I assumed it was an oversight, but now I'm not so sure." By the end of the call, Martin agreed to forward me copies of the invoices and any correspondence he had with Cameron. What I saw confirmed my suspicions. Cameron had been padding invoices with unnecessary charges, likely to cover up his tampering with budgets. I sent everything to Nick, my lawyer friend, and asked him to hold on to it. "This could be useful if we need to escalate," I told him, but I wasn't ready to bring the hammer down just yet. A week later, I got a surprising call from Erin. "Ellie," she began, her voice strained, "I'd like to invite you back for a meeting. We've reviewed your concerns, and I think it's time we address this situation properly." Her tone was almost apologetic, but I didn't trust her. "I'll consider it," I said coolly, "but I'm bringing my lawyer." There was a pause, then she sighed. Fine. The meeting was set for the following Monday. When I walked into the boardroom, Nick by my side, Erin was already seated, her usual confidence replaced by visible tension. Cameron, on the other hand, was nowhere to be seen. "Where's Cameron?" I asked, taking my seat. "He's no longer with the company," Erin said flatly. It was a satisfying moment, but I wasn't about to let them off the hook that easily. Over the next hour, Erin attempted to smooth things over. She admitted that mistakes had been made, apologized for the miscommunication, and offered to reinstate me in my previous role. I let her finish before leaning forward. "I appreciate the gesture, Erin, but reinstating me doesn't fix the damage that's been done. My reputation was dragged through the mud. I was publicly humiliated. And let's not forget the clients who've lost faith in this company." She paled. "What are you asking for?" "Full transparency," I said. "I want a written apology, acknowledgement of Cameron's misconduct, and a guarantee that my name will be cleared with all clients and staff." Nick added, "And we'll need compensation for the time Ellie was unfairly suspended, as well as damages for the emotional distress this caused." Erin looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. "I'll need to discuss this with the board." "Take your time," Nick said. "But know that if we don't get a satisfactory resolution, we're prepared to take legal action." As I left the meeting, I felt a sense of vindication. Cameron was out, Erin was on the defensive, and I had leverage. But something about Erin's reaction nagged at me. She wasn't just worried about a lawsuit. She was hiding something, and I was determined to find out what. Leaving the boardroom, I felt the tension in the air, but something about Erin's reaction lingered. She had been too quick to shift blame onto Cameron, and her apology, while rehearsed, felt hollow. This wasn't over. Over the next few days, I used my network at Weston & Company to dig deeper. Maya, always my inside source, came through once again. "You're not going to believe this," she said in a hushed tone during one of our secret calls. "Cameron didn't just get fired. He's threatening to sue the company for wrongful termination." "Wrongful?" I scoffed. "He fabricated evidence against me." "That's not the half of it," she added. "There's a rumor floating around that Erin knew about everything Cameron was doing. She signed off on some of those inflated invoices." This was a bombshell. If Erin had been complicit in Cameron's schemes, her whole mea culpa act was nothing more than a desperate attempt to cover her tracks. I called Nick immediately. "Nick, we've got bigger fish to fry. Erin might be involved in Cameron's fraud." "Interesting," he replied. "If that's true, she's not just guilty of workplace misconduct. She could face criminal charges. We'll need more proof." The proof came faster than I expected. Martin, the client who'd flagged the suspicious invoices, reached out again. He was furious. "Ellie, I got an email from Erin this morning. She's blaming Cameron for everything and trying to sweep the whole thing under the rug. She even offered us a discount on future projects as a gesture of goodwill." "She's desperate," I said. "Do you still have those invoices Cameron sent?" "I do," he confirmed. "But there's more. I noticed something odd about the signatures on the approval forms. They don't match Cameron's handwriting. They look more like Erin's." This was the smoking gun we needed. If Erin had forged documents to authorize fraudulent charges, she wasn't just complicit. She was the mastermind. That evening, I sat down with Nick to strategize. "We need to expose this carefully," he said. "If we go public too soon, Erin might spin the narrative and play the victim. But if we wait too long, she could destroy the evidence." "What's the plan?" I asked. "Leave that to me," he said with a sly smile. The next day, Nick filed a formal complaint with the board of Weston & Company, detailing everything we had uncovered. He attached copies of the fraudulent invoices, the discrepancies in the signatures, and a summary of Erin's attempts to scapegoat Cameron. It didn't take long for the board to respond. They called an emergency meeting and invited both me and Nick to attend. Walking into that meeting felt surreal. Erin sat at the head of the table, her face pale but defiant. The other board members exchanged uneasy glances as Nick began his presentation. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "we're here today because of a grave injustice. My client, Ellie Carter, was falsely accused and unfairly dismissed from her role. But this isn't just about defamation. It's about systemic corruption within your company. He laid out the evidence methodically, ending with the forged documents. This is not the work of a rogue employee, he concluded. It's a coordinated effort, sanctioned at the highest levels. The room was silent. Erin shifted uncomfortably in her chair but didn't speak. Finally, one of the board members cleared his throat. "Erin, is there anything you'd like to say?" Her response was calculated. "This is a baseless attack on my character. Cameron was the one who handled those invoices. If there are discrepancies, they're his doing, not mine." "Then explain why the signatures match your handwriting," Nick challenged. Erin faltered, but before she could respond, another board member chimed in. "We've already initiated an internal audit," she said. "And the preliminary findings aren't in your favor, Erin." Erin's mask of composure cracked. "You can't seriously believe this," she snapped. "This is all part of Ellie's vendetta against me. She's just bitter because I fired her." "Actually," I interjected, "you didn't fire me. You framed me. And now the truth is coming out." As the board deliberated, Erin sat in stony silence, her facade crumbling by the minute. Finally, the chairperson turned to her. "Erin, based on the evidence presented, we have no choice but to place you on administrative leave pending a full investigation. Effective immediately." As Erin was escorted out of the building, I felt a wave of satisfaction. But this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Cameron's lawsuit, Erin's downfall, and the impending audit would expose the rot within Weston and Company. And as for me, I had one final card to play, one that would ensure I came out on top. Erin's departure set off a chain reaction. As the audit intensified, more skeletons began tumbling out of Weston and Company's closet. The board uncovered years of financial mismanagement, much of it tied directly to Erin. But Cameron wasn't off the hook either. A week after Erin's suspension, I received a call from Maya. "Ellie, you're not going to believe this. Cameron just made a deal with the auditors. He's spilling everything in exchange for immunity." "Everything?" I asked, my heart racing. "Everything," she confirmed. "He's throwing Erin under the bus, claiming she orchestrated the entire scheme." This was it. With Cameron cooperating, Erin's fate was sealed. But I wasn't satisfied with simply watching her downfall. I wanted to make sure she faced consequences beyond Weston and Company. I reached out to Martin, the client who had flagged the fraudulent invoices, and proposed a plan. "Martin, what if we take this public?" I suggested. "If other clients learn what Erin and Cameron have been up to, it could pressure the company to act faster and prevent them from covering anything up." He hesitated. "That's a big step, Ellie. Are you ready for the fallout?" "I've already lost everything," I said. "What more can they take from me?" Martin agreed to collaborate. We drafted a detailed exposé, outlining the fraudulent activities and implicating Erin and Cameron. To protect ourselves legally, we focused solely on verified facts and avoided speculation. When the article went live, it was a bombshell. Industry forums lit up with outrage. Weston and Company's clients demanded answers, and several major accounts threatened to pull their contracts unless immediate action was taken. The fallout was swift. The board terminated Erin's employment and filed a lawsuit against her for damages. Cameron, while avoiding prosecution, was blacklisted from the industry. But Erin wasn't going down quietly. I received an email from her 2 days after the exposé went viral. Subject: "You'll regret this. Ellie, you think you've won, but you haven't. You've destroyed my career, but I'll make sure you never work in this industry again. Watch your back." I forwarded the email to Nick. "Is this a threat?" I asked. "It's desperate," he replied. "She knows her options are running out. But let's not take any chances." Meanwhile, Weston and Company scrambled to salvage their reputation. The board reached out to me with an offer. "Ellie, we'd like to invite you back as a consultant to help clean up the mess. Your insight into our operations could be invaluable." I laughed out loud. "You want me to help fix the company that fired me on false pretenses?" "We're prepared to compensate you generously," the chairperson added. "I'll think about it," I said, knowing full well what my answer would be. Instead, I focused on rebuilding my career on my own terms. With Nick's help, I launched my own consulting firm, specializing in fraud prevention and corporate ethics. My first client? Martin's company. But Erin's threat loomed in the background. True to her word, she tried to smear my reputation, spreading rumors and contacting potential clients to dissuade them from working with me. Her efforts backfired spectacularly. One of the clients she contacted happened to be an investigative journalist who smelled blood in the water. He started digging into Erin's past and uncovered even more skeletons: shady business deals, a questionable MBA, and a history of throwing colleagues under the bus to climb the corporate ladder. When the journalist's article went live, Erin's name became synonymous with corporate corruption. Her remaining allies distanced themselves, and even her personal relationships began to crumble. But the final twist came when I received an unexpected package in the mail. Inside was a USB drive with a note. "Ellie, I think this belongs to you. A friend." I plugged it into my laptop, and my jaw dropped. The drive contained a series of emails between Erin and Weston and Company's former CFO, detailing a kickback scheme involving offshore accounts. It was the missing piece of the puzzle, the one thing that could ensure Erin faced criminal charges. I forwarded the emails to Nick, who immediately contacted the authorities. The next morning, the headlines were everywhere. Corporate scandal deepens. Former executive faces criminal charges for embezzlement and fraud. Erin was arrested at her home, her fall from grace now complete. As I watched the news unfold, I couldn't help but feel a sense of closure. Erin and Cameron had tried to destroy me, but their actions had ultimately led to their own undoing. And as for me, I had built something new, something better. A career defined not by revenge, but by resilience.